Welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Wayles Browne. Today we're talking with Ariel Gold from Jewish Voice for Peace. And in fact, you're the local coordinator of Jewish Voice for Peace.
I am.
And what does your organization do and why?
So, Jewish Voice for Peace takes a stand on the human rights abuses and violations of international law that are occurring in Israel-Palestine. I'm also the local coordinator of the We Divest Coalition, which is connected to Jewish Voice for Peace, and we specifically work on an aspect of the boycott, divestment, and sanctions call from the Palestinian people, and we target TIAA CREFT, which is the primary retirement fund provider for Ithaca College and Cornell University, demanding that they divest from the occupation, specifically from companies that profit from or contribute to human rights abuses in Israel-Palestine.
Okay, that means you want the retirement fund to not invest its money in stock of different companies.
Yes.
If the companies do business there, or
there's a number of companies that TIAA CREFT has investments in: Caterpillar, Elbeat, Hewlett Packard, Motorola, and these companies are directly involved in the occupation of Palestine and in specific human rights abuses and violations of international law there. So we asked TIAA CREFT to divest specifically from these companies and develop investment criteria based on not having the companies have egregious human rights violations.
Okay, now they do have retirement funds that say don't invest in tobacco companies.
Yes.
How has their reaction to your call been different?
It's been somewhat mixed, actually. We've heard that it's now being said that investment companies are being asked to disclose when companies are involved in the occupation of Palestine because these are now considered to be risky investments. TIAA CREFT did drop Caterpillar from its social choice fund due to Caterpillar stock being downgraded directly because of its involvement in the occupation. And Caterpillar makes armored bulldozers that demolish Palestinian homes. So we have seen some success with that. On the other hand, this summer, around 200 shareholders from TIAA CREFT had submitted a resolution asking that TIAA CREFT divest from all companies with egregious human rights abuses and develop future socially responsible investment criteria. And TIAA CREFT went to the SEC and got special permission not to bring that resolution to a shareholder vote. So they have evaded us, but we're also quite aware that they know what's going on and are concerned about the pressure coming internationally and specifically within the U.S., asking them to divest.
Okay, we'll start back a bit.
Sure.
Israel is a long, skinny country in the Middle East.
It sure is.
And there's also the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, which had been inhabited by Palestinians.
Yes.
And what's been happening since the foundation of Israel.
Yes. Well, all of Israel, Palestine, Israel proper, the Gaza Strip and the West Bank had been inhabited by Palestinians prior to 1948. And there was sort of this myth within the Jewish narrative that Israel was a land with a land without people, that people weren't living there prior to 1948. And I think the word is they called it a land without people for a people without land. And that was the premise upon which Israel was founded. Israeli Independence Day, which is celebrated annually among Jews and in Israel, is for Palestinians referred to as al-Nakba, which means the catastrophe. And in 1948, the creation of Israel involved the expulsion of believe the Institute for Middle East Studies estimates it to be 750,000 Palestinians. That wasn't all the Palestinians. They didn't all leave, but in mass, many of them did. And this has been documented to have been an act of ethnic cleansing. So many of them are still refugees. They're in Lebanon, in Jordan, and in the West Bank. So today's actually an important day because yesterday was the anniversary of UN Resolution 194, which was passed in 1948.
So we're filming this on December 12th, and so December 11th,
yes,
1948 was
the anniversary of the United Nations Resolution 194, which grants Palestinians the right of return, and it's the right to return to their homes that they were expelled from in 1948. And the resolution specifically states that this right applies to future generations. And that it also applies if those homes no longer exist, because some of those homes were burned to the ground, bulldozed. It's not the same place anymore, but that they either have the right to return or to get compensation, and that's their choice. And while I was in Israel, Palestine, I visited Palestinian homes, and what I continued to see was that people have the keys to the original homes that they lived in. I stayed with a family in the West Bank, and they hung their keys on their wall next to a framed document from the United Nations of their right of return, in particular, stating their city of origin as Haifa, which is in Israel proper, where they're not allowed to return to.
Well, that is touching to somebody who knows the earlier history, because the Jews who had to leave Spain and moved to the Turkish Empire also in many cases still can show you the keys to their houses in Spain.
Yes.
Okay, so Israel was set up in 1948.
Yes.
On land that used to be, well, it was in the Turkish Empire.
Yes.
And then the British Empire took it over after World War One.
Right. It was a British mandate. And in 1948 it was given to Israel. But not given so that Israel could expel the people that were living there.
Oh. So Jews from European countries had been gradually coming in? And
yes, and there was a much larger influx following the Holocaust. Zionism, which is a political movement to have the establishment of a Jewish state under Jewish rule, existed prior to the Holocaust, but was a much more fringe movement, much smaller, and it wasn't until after World War II that it gained momentum and large support.
Okay, so now there's Israel and Palestine, and if you think about the people who live in the area now, is it true to say they're mainly Jewish, but not entirely?
Well, within Israel proper, which excludes the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and Golan Heights and East Jerusalem's a separate issue, so we can get to that. Within Israel proper, there are a number of different nationalities. Israel is actually the only country in the world that makes a determination between citizenship and nationality. Here in the U.S., we're American citizens, and that also makes us American nationals. In Israel, you can be, if you're Jewish, you're an Israeli citizen and a Jewish national. If you're Palestinian, you can be, if you remained in Israel proper after 1948, if you didn't leave, you can have Israeli citizenship, but you have Arab nationality.
It's called Arab.
Arab nationality. It's now currently on IDs or passports. They're no longer allowed to print nationality. They used to. So they're no longer allowed to. It's blacked out. It has nationality, but it's blacked out. However, you can still tell, so somebody at the border can still tell whether an Israeli citizen has Jewish nationality or Arabic nationality, because the date on their passport is either written in the Gregorian calendar or the Hebrew calendar. So your nationality is blacked out, but if you're Jewish, your date of birth is in the Hebrew calendar, clearly identifying your nationality or your ethnicity. And if you're Palestinian, it's written in the Gregorian. So it's still very easy to tell.
And that's equally true for Palestinian Muslim Arabs and for Palestinian Christian Arabs?
Yes. Yes. And so there's a number of different determinations that you can have. So if you remained in Israel after 1948, you were able to achieve Israeli citizenship, and that's a minority population in Israel, ensuring that Israel is still under Jewish political rule, though there are some cities, Nazareth, for example, which is Palestinian. But if you live in East Jerusalem, you cannot have Israeli citizenship, for the most part, if you're Palestinian. And East Jerusalem is still in some ways considered to be occupied, but in other ways it's been annexed by Israel. And Israel claims to have annexed it, and they built the separation wall, which is often referred to as the apartheid wall, outside of East Jerusalem. So in effect, annexing East Jerusalem. However, as a Palestinian in East Jerusalem is mostly Palestinian, aside from Jewish settlers, you can have permanent residency, but not citizenship. And permanent residency is something that Palestinians in East Jerusalem have to continue to prove. And they have to prove this by making sure to pay their water bills. They have to pay for garbage collection. However, the garbage is actually not collected. And when you go there, you see that the garbage in East Jerusalem is not picked up. The Israeli garbage service refuses to pick it up. They say that it's too dangerous for them. So it's in piles around, and often Palestinians have to burn their garbage because they can't get pickup. But they still have to pay the bill, because if they don't pay the bill, Israel can say to them that East Jerusalem, they haven't proved that East Jerusalem is their place of permanent residence, and then can force them to leave.
So this is using bureaucratic tactics to make life difficult for, the Palestinian population.
Yes, the phrase that I heard there was, I heard a couple of phrases. One is silent transfer. And the point of that is to make life so unbearable for Palestinians that they leave on their own. It's also called voluntary transfer. And I would say that Israel works very hard at this. You can tell the difference between Palestinian homes or apartments throughout all of Israel, Palestine. This was my experience. And Jewish homes, whether this is in the West Bank, where there's settlements, or in East Jerusalem, or in Israel proper, because for Palestinians, water is turned on only for a few hours every week to 3 weeks. And so they have these black water containers on the roofs of their houses where they collect the water, so where they store their water when it is turned on, so that they can use it through the rest of the time. And you don't see this on Jewish homes. Jewish water for agriculture is subsidized, and you have to have Jewish nationality in order to get a water subsidy. So this is some of the ways that an apartheid system is carried out through bureaucratic means, and the purpose of this is to make life so unbearable that Palestinians leave. And another way that that's done is through home demolitions. So the figure that I heard was that only approximately 1% of Palestinian building permits are granted. Yet, as everywhere, people continue to have children, they continue to have families, and they continue to need homes. So people continue to build. houses are then put under demolition order. But when we think of demolition order, in the U.S., we would think of it that they would tell you your house or the addition to your house has a demolition order, and you have all these processes to go through, upon which time you would get more and more warning about when this demolition is going to take place. In East Jerusalem, where there's a lot of home demolitions, there are processes you can go through to contest the demolition order, but when the demolition is going to take place is not told to you. It could be anywhere between a month, 10 months. The demolitions usually occur between 3 and 6 in the morning, and the army shows up with bulldozers, surrounds the home, gives the family 10 minutes to leave. If the family refuses to leave, they throw tear gas canisters into the house, and then they bulldoze the home. They actually make a point also of cracking the foundation to the home. And this goes back into that psychological warfare again, because it's cracking the foundation of Palestinian society. And then the family is charged for the demolition. So you have to pay for your own home demolition. I heard a story about a little girl, who would go to school every day, and she would bring her favorite dollhouse with her. It was a rather big dollhouse. And she would go to school, and finally one day her teacher said to her, "Why do you carry this giant dollhouse to and from school every day?" And she said, "I don't know each day if my home will be there when I get back."
Well, now, in the outside world, Israel has the reputation for being a democratic country with elections and a parliament and many political parties, and being a place where people criticize each other openly and say, "You're wrong."
Yes. Yes.
But does anybody in the Israeli population say, "You're wrong in doing this"?
There is a lot of academic debate back and forth, and a lot of academic articles written on it. So there's, again, democracy is a relative term there. It's very important to Israelis to have a majority. Demographics are an extremely important concept to Israelis. And they have to have a Jewish majority in order to maintain Jewish rule. So I don't consider that to be a democratic principle. I believe in a pluralistic, non-discriminatory democratic state, and to me that's a contradiction there. Palestinians do rule some cities, such as Nazareth, where there is a Palestinian population, but Israel's very careful to have a Jewish majority so that they control the state. And academic debate is very welcomed in Israeli universities. However, I heard stories of Palestinians who are immediately jailed for a Facebook post, for graffiti, and so that, again, that kind of term academic or democracy of debate can be considered relative, because Palestinians, both in Israel proper and in the West Bank, don't have the same rights as Jewish Israelis. A strong example of the difference in rights would be arrests of Palestinian children in the West Bank. Palestinian children, when they're arrested in the West Bank, don't have the right to meet with their parent, to have a parent present at interrogation. They also have a divider between them and their parent when their parent comes to visit them. They may be able to keep that visit from happening for a long time. And Palestinians have difficulty of travel, so getting to your child who's been jailed, and your child could be as young as 5, is very difficult. There's a lot of demands being put forth to protect the rights of Palestinian child prisoners. So there are also the documents. If you're a child who's arrested, a Palestinian child in, say, the occupied city of Hebron, the documents are written in Hebrew. Many of these children only speak Arabic. So there's both ways that laws differ directly and ways that it's done through a bureaucratic structure.
Now, this is the army that goes in and arrests people, or what?
It could
what
be
part
either.
of the state does it?
It depends on where it's taking place. So in the occupied city of Hebron, it would most likely be the army, but in other places it could be the police.
And that's the same army that all Israelis, men and women, get drafted into?
Not all Israelis. The ultra-Orthodox are exempted from serving, and Palestinian citizens are exempted from serving. The Druze, I'm mispronouncing that, who are Palestinian, do serve. So
They're a different religious group?
Yes, it's a different group of Palestinians. So there's some differences in that, but certainly a large number of Israelis serve in the Palestinian army.
Say that again?
Certainly the majority of Israelis do serve in the army, but there are some exemptions and different things that occur, some categories regarding that.
So does that mean that a large number of Israeli veterans are aware of what's going on in the occupied territories, or are they not aware?
My experience while I was there, I'm Jewish, and we stayed in East Jerusalem, and I spent a lot of nights walking from East Jerusalem to West Jerusalem and experiencing the difference. And it's a difference of affluence, just different in so many ways. And I would meet people because I wear a Jewish star and I'm easily recognizable as an American Jew, and I was very, very welcomed into coffee shops and restaurants. It was my first time in Israel, Palestine. And people would ask, how long I was staying and if I was part of a group. And I explained that I was there as part of the Interfaith Peace Builders delegation to witness the effects of the occupation. And that I was spending a lot of my time in the West Bank. And their jaws would drop. That's very unsafe. You cannot go there. And I would say to them, I was just there. I just stayed over in a Palestinian home. I was welcomed. I've never experienced such generosity. And I would say to them, have you ever gone? Do you ever cross the wall? And over again, I would continue to hear, no, I never go. I never cross the wall. I want to mention a couple things because I know we're getting close to running out of time. Yeah. And I want to say that some of the work that's being done to end the occupation is primarily what I support is the BDS movement, boycott, divestment, and sanctions. I mentioned it in the beginning. People can go to, I think it's bds.org. In 2005, Palestinian civil society put forth a call to use the same tactics that were used to end apartheid in South Africa, to end the apartheid system and the occupation of Palestine. The We Divest organization that I spoke about works on an aspect of the BDS movement, and people can go to wedivest.org. That's WEDIVEST.org. And people can also go to Jewish Voice for Peace, and they can email me individually at jewishvoice4peace@gmail.com.
That has the word Ithaca in it?
Yes, I'm sorry. I misspoke that. Thank you. Yeah. Ithaca Jewish Voice 4 peace@gmail.com.
Okay, so there is a movement here
yes.
in Ithaca, and you can put people in touch with it.
Yes, and we...
Do they have to be Jewish in order
They certainly do not. And the We Divest Coalition is supported by a number of groups in the Ithaca area. Cornell Students for Justice in Palestine, Ithaca College Students for Justice in Palestine. We're often supported by the Dorothy Cotton Institute, the Unitarian Social Justice Council, Catholic Workers. So we work through a lot of groups.
And just the fact that you were there is more important that you're now able to come back here and tell people here about it, or could you do anything directly for the Palestinians?
Boycott, divestment, and sanctions we can do directly, which directly affects that. So the purpose is to put pressure on Israel, to hold Israel to become in compliance with international law and end human rights abuses. And that is a boycott for all Israeli products. That includes locally, it includes Sabra hummus. It includes SodaStream, which is a product by which people can make their own soda at home. It includes demanding divestment through TIAA Craft and opposing the Cornell Technion partnership. Technion is an Israeli technical university that partners with Cornell and also has partnerships with the Israeli army and is involved in the development of weapons used on the Palestinian population, specifically civilians and children. And people can go to Cornell SJP to learn more about that, and that's cornellsjp.wix.com.
Okay, we will put those addresses up on the screen, and also people can call you for more information.
They sure can. Let me put up my phone number too, and people are welcome to call. It's 510-599-5330. That's 510-599-5330.
Okay, so we've been talking to Ariel Gold, who is coordinator, you say both the local coordinator for Ithaca Jewish Voice for Peace and the local coordinator for We Divest,
Yes.
which is a related organization, is that true?
Yes.
And you've had some events here. You were picketing?
Yes, we were just in front of the Target store at the Ithaca Mall. We actually did caroling to ask the Target store to stop carrying SodaStream and asking consumers to boycott it, to send a message to SodaStream that they're in violation of international law and that we won't support them. Their plant is on a settlement in the West Bank, which is stolen Palestinian land, and they commit labor abuses against the Palestinian people who work for them.
So they hire Palestinians, but...
They do. They prevent them from organizing because Israel controls checkpoints within the West Bank, so there's very little freedom of movement. And so the SodaStream plant is able through that to prevent organizing and also pays far, far below living wage.
So this becomes a freedom of unionization cause too.
And a wage issue, yes.
We've been talking to Ariel Gold from Ithaca Jewish Voice for Peace. I'm Wayles Browne. This has been Ithaca DSA Presents.